Truth. Well, I'm your host, Neshia Matthews. And this week has been a really long week. And when I tell you, having faith the size of a mustard seed, which your granny used to say, you got to have faith the size of a mustard seed, is what got me through this week, which is what we going to talk about, faith over fear. Yes, let's talk about it. Because walking into the unknown and trusting God, it's like walking on fire. You don't really know what's behind the doors, what's up under the ground. It's just life feels uncertain because you don't know. You're trusting His plan, His strategy, and you gotta go with it. And we're gonna talk about it today because trusting God has helped me so much. My life has changed drastically. Okay, since trusting God, and it's a good thing. Okay, but I do want to share that trusting God is more than posting Instagram posts and quotes and saying that you're walking with God. You have to be suited and booted and ready to go through whatever and walking by faith and not knowing if you're going to win the battle or not. Okay? It's been a challenge, but it's also been a blessing because where I am now, I am very thankful that I got to experience and hear God clearly to be able to walk by faith. Faith and fear don't go together. Let's get that there, right there. The battle between faith and fear. Number one, it does not go together. Fear is when you start doubting, you have anxiety, you're overthinking it. Faith is trust, surrendering, and courage. Confidence, knowing that it is going to work together for the good of all. Okay? We are in a season, and I'm going to just be real, we're battling with flesh and spirit. And a lot of people don't know what it is to walk by faith. They say that they have faith, but they don't. Faith is completely taking your hands off of it and letting God run the show. Okay? I learned that God is not the author of fear. That is the enemy coming in to stop you, what God has promised you, what God has designed and destined for you to do. Okay? Y'all know we love a good story time. So let's talk about it. My life before trusting God I had a cool life. I'm going to be honest with you. I was not praying. I was not fasting how I do now. I mean, I did pray and fast, but honestly, it was just to get the things that I want. And I went through a season. I had a good job. I was a homeowner at a certain age. I knew that those things came from God, but I wasn't giving Him that one-on-one time. God would give me a plan and I would run with it. That wasn't really me walking by faith. That was me. He'll give me an idea. I'll put my own twist to it and I'll make it work for me versus letting Him walk me completely through the journey. I had been working on this job since I was 18 years old. It was my first job. And God spoke to me and told me, walk away from the job. I kept refusing to walk away from the job because I'm like, it's stability. I'm making good money. I got good benefits. Why would I walk away from my job? Okay. I ended up catching COVID. And I was in ICU for 2.5 months. And I was fighting for my life, y'all. Like, I was really going through it. And it was one of those moments when, again, God was like, I have gave you everything you have asked me for. When are you going to surrender to me and give me what I want? And of course, when you're laying in a hospital bed and, you're going into a coma, you like, come on, God, I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. When things get rough, we tend to surrender and say, God, I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. And the moment He get us up out that situation, we revert back to our old ways. But in this case, I couldn't do that because it was one of them things, either you're going to surrender to me and walk by faith, or I'm just going to go ahead and take you up out of here. So I surrendered it back to God, and I ended up, he forced me to leave my corporate job. And at that very moment, my life changed. I didn't know that my life was going to change, but it changed. I went from robbing Peter to pay Paul to being financially stable as a single mom. And it was me walking out on faith and trusting that what God had for me was better than what any man can do. Because most of the time when we, for example, the job, that's us trusting man. We're trusting that we're going to go on this job, we're going to work 8 to 10 hours, and we're going to get a solid paycheck. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying every individual is an entrepreneur. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have to have faith when God tells you to do something. So even if you are a 9-to-5 daddy, if God told you to apply for the job, don't worry about the credentials that you need for the job. Go for the job, right? If he tell you to apply for the higher position, don't worry about how you're going to get the position. Apply for it. That's what I'm meaning. I'm not saying that walk away from your corporate job right now. My testimony is that he had me to walk away from my 6-figure corporate job and turn me into a 6-figure entrepreneur. That was walking by faith and trusting the process. And I had to learn that fear was controlling a lot of my decisions because I was dreaming for these things, but I was scared to even just pursue them. It was like, nah, I'm not qualified. Nah, I don't think I can meet these people. But when I tell you God put me in the room with individuals that helped my brain grow for me to be a 6-figure earner, it blows my mind to this day, because if you asked me 5 years ago, would I be in this house? Would I be this business owner? Would I even be doing this podcast right now? Because let's be real, this is all God's timing. He gave me a vision and said, start the podcast. I didn't want to start a podcast. This was the last thing that was on my mind. It was brought to me that people told me to do it, but I was just like, nah, that's not something I want to do. It was me getting over fear of sitting in front of the camera and talking to those and touching other individuals on the side of this camera, and knowing that faith is going to take me places that fear will allow me to be stuck in a box. It didn't happen overnight, but I will tell you this, and I will share with you how I was able to get past that fear and so I wouldn't feel stuck all the time. Was, I'm going to be real, I had to learn to surrender control. That's it. I had to surrender control back to God. And what that means is trusting God, being okay with saying, I don't know what's next, and I don't know what you have planned for me, but I trust you. I tell myself all the time, no matter how hard it get, God, I still trust you. I live by, in God I trust. You know, and that's just moving even when you don't know how he will provide. You know, you don't know where the next meal is going to come. You don't know where the next money is going to come. It's believing that he will do it. I know we already had story time, but I'm going to share with y'all another story time, because just this week I had to walk by faith in my season. 2024 was hard for me, and God never took his hand off of me. But I was dealing with a situation where it was either you're going to control it and you may crash, or you're going to walk by faith and trust that what God is doing for you is going to work out. And just to give a little back history, I had got behind on my mortgage and everything. And, it came to the point to where it was either you're going to try to put the house up for sale in 3 weeks and sell it, or you're going to end up losing the house because it's on the foreclosure list. And I asked a couple of people, I'm like, hey, what would you do? Do you think that I should go ahead and try to move closer to the city because I'm tired of the drive? I want to be closer in. I want to try to have something affordable. Or do you think I should pay it? Fear had me, if I paid the money, where was you going to get this money from next? Because the season is over with. You know, and if you spend this kind of money, you don't know where your next dollar is going to come from. But faith kept telling me, stand your ground, trust the process, and know that God is going to come through and bless you. And he was giving me little signs, but I still was kind of like, okay, I'm not sure. So I took the whole week of Easter, Holy Week, and I went on a fast. So that way I can hear God clearly, because I don't have that much time. You know, I need to figure out either I'm moving and selling this house, or if I'm going to stay here and pay my past due mortgage. And he spoke to me and said, I gave you that money to get caught up on your mortgage. Take care of your business, and I'm gonna give it back to you times 3. And when I tell y'all, when I made the decision to pay the mortgage, he literally blessed me with $1 million listing. And I can't even make this up, which is the same money that I had to pay to get caught up on my mortgage. And I'm telling you this to say, it was because I chose faith over fear. I didn't let the enemy come in and have me fearful and say, pack up your stuff and move and lose your house, when this is the same house that God blessed me with. You know, I had to surrender that control. I had to take my hand off of it and say, God, I surrender this back to you, and help me to understand where it is I'm going wrong. Because I can honestly say I only got behind because I wasn't being a good steward over my finances. Right? We pray and we ask God for these things, but then we're not being a good steward. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, okay? We're going to stay focused on that, surrendering control back to him and walking out on faith, which will then now lead us to that when what to do when trusting God feel hard. You just heard me say I was in a hard rock. I didn't understand, okay, you're going to put me and my kids out? Like, I've been living in this home for 3 years. I never got behind on my mortgage before. I always pay my bills up a year ahead of time. Since God has blessed me to be a 6-figure plus earner, I have paid my bills up for a year. However, 2024 was the season that he stripped me. When I surrendered it back to him, he stripped me down for me to need him. Not for me to lean to my own understanding, but to lean to his. And I had to just be honest in prayer. You know, when I'm spending that one-on-one time with him, I had to be honest and say, this feels hard. And I don't understand. If we reference back to the book of Job, he did question God. It's okay to question and say, well, what did I do that I'm going through this? You know? And everybody goes through their Job season. 2024 just happened to be my Job season. And I had to realize that God was speaking his promises even when I didn't feel them yet. He gave me multiple promises, and it didn't feel like those promises was coming to pass. But here's the thing that I also had to learn, that when God gives you a promise, it still has to stand. It has to be fulfilled. And either you're going to go through the work and put in the fight, because you're going to fight. Let's be real. Nothing is easy. You know, you're going to have to put in the fight to walk by faith and not by fear. If you walk by fear, you're not going to get the promise that God has for you. But if you walk by faith, trusting that he's going to grant you that promise and give you the desires of your heart, it will come to pass. And another thing that helped me, and maybe this can help you too, I had to stay connected to people who strengthened my faith. If you are connected to somebody that is putting fear in your mind and saying, oh, if it was me, I wouldn't do this. Oh, if it was me, I wouldn't pay for this. I wouldn't do this. Do you think people... Cut those individuals off today. We are no longer accepting fear into our spirit, not in 2025. If you know deep down inside that you are destined to be great, go for it. Understand me and hear me clearly. I had my first child at the age of 18. I was already considered to be a statistic, okay? And when I tell you God never took his hands off of me, people to this day say how proud they are because of how hard I have went. But his favor, his grace, and his mercy has took me places that fear couldn't get me in. You understand what I'm saying? Which leads us into going into encouragement for listeners. You know, identify God's character. It's constant even when your situation changes. It won't change. God is a constant. He hears you. Just because he's not moving when you don't want him to move, don't mean he's not moving. He is moving. Understand me when I'm telling you that I am a true believer. And I promised, I said, he got me out of some things that I know I shouldn't have been in. And it's nothing but God heard me. He came through. And what that song say, late in the midnight hour, he will turn it around, okay? You're not just walking into the unknown alone. God is already ahead of you. That's why the light is at the end of the tunnel. That's why the light is at the end of the forest, because he's already giving you the plan and the strategy. He's just waiting on you to be obedient. And remember this, obedience is better than sacrifice, okay? The moment that you be obedient and surrender it back to God is the moment that he will step in and he will change your life. And I'm not saying it's going to be peaches and cream. That's not what I'm saying, because you got to be prepared. You got to be suited and booted and ready to go to war. But what I am saying is, if you trust him and walk by faith and not by sight, your life will be completely different than where you are today. Okay? Some of the best stories in the Bible, if you don't believe me, go back to the book of Abraham, with Abraham, Moses, and Ruth. You know, a lot of people are on their journey of a kingdom spouse, and they reference back to Ruth and Boaz. But what people got to understand is, when Ruth lost it all, she had faith that God was going to restore her whole. And once she was obedient and surrendered it back to him, she met Boaz. Okay? These are stories that people don't talk about. It's trusting in uncertain places, even though it looks crazy. I tell him all the time, I'm like, okay, God, just look a little crazy. But I trust you, you know. Write it on your mirror. Write it on your mirror that you look into every day when you're getting yourself together, and say, no matter how hard it get, God, I trust you. At the end of the day, we know that faith isn't easy, right? But I want you to know it's worth it. And God is a faithful God. He's a faithful God, and he's an on-time God, even when life is uncertain. He's going to come through like a rushing wind and turn the whole scenario around and have you like, dang, God, because y'all know he's a humorous God at that. So he got to give you a little laughter in there and make you feel that he left you, when in all actuality, he never left you. He was right beside you the whole time, giving you the plan and the strategy. Okay? Y'all know we got to have a challenge for this week. Okay? So your challenge this week is that we're going to remove fear from our mind and our heart, and we're going to surrender what is bothering you, what you feel is hindering you from becoming that full potential, whether it's trauma from the childhood, whether it's forgiveness that you never got from an individual, whether it's that bill that needs to be paid, although he already know you need to pay the bill. But I want you to take your hand off of it, surrender the control, and put it back in his hand and walk by faith. Y'all know my favorite Bible verse, 2 Corinthians 5:7. Will we walk by faith and not by sight? Try it for 1 week. Just have that faith the size of a mustard seed and watch how God do for you in your life, okay? And come back and tell me. And on the next episode, we're going to talk about sex, celibacy, and standards. Because when you're choosing to walk by faith and not fear, and you surrender that control back to him, he's now going to change your appetite and your behavior, and you're going to have to shed some of them old ways. And we going to talk about it, okay? Because you can't stay the same. Once you choose to walk by faith, you cannot stay the same, all right? So until next time, I'll see y'all later.